This is my true story. I buried my son 22 years ago. I stood at his grave every Sunday for over 2 decades. His phone number stayed in my contacts because deleting it felt like losing him twice. Last month, my phone rang at 3:15 a.m. His name lit up the screen. I answered. A voice said, "Dad, where am I?" It was him. My dead son was calling me, confused, scared, asking why nothing made sense. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't speak. My name is Hudson Porter. I'm 58 years old, a retired mechanical engineer from Caterpillar. Before I tell you what happened next, you need to understand what I lost and how it shaped every day of my life for the past 22 years. 22 years ago, I buried my son beneath an oak tree at Mountain View Cemetery in Pennsylvania. His name was carved into gray stone. Griffin James Porter, born April 12, 1982, died September 15, 2001, 19 years old. The funeral lasted 45 minutes. There were maybe 35 people there. His mother stood beside me but wouldn't look at the casket. She stared at the ground the entire time. Her sister had to hold her up because her legs kept giving out. Griffin's friends came, young kids with red eyes who didn't know what to say. They shuffled their feet on the grass. They mumbled condolences that sounded rehearsed. Within a year, most of them stopped calling. Within 2 years, none of them mentioned his name when they saw me around town. That's how death works. People move on. They have to. But I couldn't. The accident happened on a Friday night. He was driving home from his job at Murphy's Auto Parts. Griffin loved working on engines almost as much as I did. I'd taught him everything I knew about transmissions and carburetors. He was saving money for community college, wanted to study automotive engineering, had his whole life mapped out. A drunk driver ran a red light and hit him on the driver's side. The impact killed him instantly. That's what the police told me. No suffering, no pain, just gone. I got the call at 11:28 p.m. I remember the exact time because I was in my garage working on my 1969 Chevelle and I looked at the clock on the workbench when the phone rang. It was my landline back then. The cordless phone sitting next to my toolbox. Officer Martinez said there had been an accident. He said I needed to come to Carolina Regional Medical Center immediately. He wouldn't tell me anything else over the phone, but I knew. Parents always know. That tone in his voice, the careful way he avoided saying certain words. I drove there going 85 mph in my pickup truck. I didn't care if I crashed. Part of me hoped I would. When I arrived, they took me to a private room. Small, beige walls, uncomfortable chairs, a box of tissues on the side table. That's when I knew for certain. They only use private rooms for bad news, for life-changing conversations, for telling fathers their sons are dead. They let me see him in the morgue. His face was untouched by the impact. He looked asleep, peaceful, like when he was little, and I'd check on him before going to bed myself. I touched his hand and it was still warm. I kept thinking he would wake up. I stood there for 2 hours, waiting for his chest to move, waiting for him to open his eyes and ask what happened. It never came. His mother arrived and screamed, not crying, screaming. Raw, animal sounds that brought security guards running. She collapsed right there on the hospital floor. They had to sedate her with something that knocked her out completely. She couldn't do the identification. She couldn't sign the paperwork. She couldn't handle any of it. I did everything alone. I picked the coffin. Dark mahogany, solid construction. Griffin would have appreciated the craftsmanship. I chose the plot under that oak tree because he used to climb oaks when he was young. I wrote the obituary, struggling with how to summarize a 19-year-old life in 3 paragraphs. I selected the flowers. White lilies because his mother always said they meant rebirth, though I didn't believe in that anymore. I did it all in a fog, moving through motions I didn't understand. Signing papers, writing checks, making decisions about things no parent should ever have to decide. The funeral director was kind but professional. He'd done this 1,000 times. For me, it was the end of the world. The funeral was worse than the hospital. At the hospital, I could pretend. I could imagine the doctors made a mistake. I could think maybe it was someone else's son in that bed. But at the funeral, they lowered him into the ground. I heard the machinery humming. I heard the coffin settle into the earth with a hollow thud that I still hear in quiet moments. People threw flowers onto the lid. His mother threw a letter she had written but never let me read. I threw a wrench from my toolbox. The 3/8-inch combination wrench he always borrowed to work on his motorcycle. It landed on the wooden lid with a metallic clank, that echoed in the hole. After everyone left, I stayed. The cemetery workers filled the grave, shovel by shovel, dirt by dirt. I watched every minute of it. I needed to see it finished. I needed to know he was really down there, that this was really happening. When they packed the last of the dirt and smoothed it level with the surrounding ground, I finally walked away. That was September 22nd, 2001, 7 days after he died, 7 days after my life ended too. For 22 years, I visited that grave every Sunday without fail. Rain, snow, blazing summer heat. Didn't matter. I brought fresh flowers every week, white lilies when I could get them, carnations when I couldn't. I talked to him like he was still there, still listening. I told him about my week at Caterpillar, about the projects I was working on, about the Chevelle restoration that was taking forever because I kept getting distracted. I told him things I couldn't tell anyone else, how his mother and I were falling apart, how we'd sit at the dinner table in complete silence because every conversation somehow led back to him, how I'd wake up at 3 a.m. and walk to his room just to stand in the doorway hoping maybe this time he'd be there sleeping. His mother stopped coming to the cemetery after the first year. "It hurts too much," she said. "I need to move forward, Hudson. We both do." But I couldn't move forward. Every Sunday, I drove those 15 minutes to Mountain View Cemetery and knelt by that headstone. Sometimes I'd bring tools and work on my truck in the parking lot afterward just to stay close a little longer. We divorced 3 years after Griffin died. Grief killed our marriage slowly, like rust eating through good steel. She remarried 4 years later, moved to Florida with her new husband. Built a new life with someone who didn't carry the weight of our dead son in every conversation. I understood. Maybe even envied her ability to start over. I couldn't do that. I kept Griffin's room exactly the way he left it. His snap-on toolbox still sat on his desk, organized the way I'd taught him. Socket wrenches arranged by size, combination wrenches hanging on the pegboard. His motorcycle magazines were still stacked on the nightstand, Sport Rider, Cycle World, issues from summer 2001 that he never got to finish reading. His phone number stayed in my contacts. I paid Verizon $25 every month to keep the line alive, even though the phone had been disconnected since December 2001. $25 a month for 22 years. That's $6,600 to keep a dead number in my phone. People said I was throwing money away. My brother Rick said I needed therapy. My neighbor Jim said I needed to let go. I didn't care what people said. That number was the last connection I had to him, the last piece of Griffin that still existed in the world. Deleting it would have been like burying him twice. I learned to live around the emptiness. That's what you do when you lose a child. You don't get over it or move on. You just learn to walk carefully around the hole they leave behind. You learn to function. You go to work, you pay bills, you change the oil in your truck. You pretend you're fine when people ask how you're doing, but you're never fine. Every birthday that passes without them is torture. Every Father's Day is a reminder of what you lost. Every Christmas becomes an exercise in pretending to care about presents and turkey dinners when all you want is to hear their voice one more time. I watched Griffin's friends grow up without him. Tommy Morrison became a mechanic like he always wanted. Brad Sullivan got married, had 3 kids, bought a house 2 miles from where we used to live. Derek Paulson joined the Army, served 2 tours in Afghanistan, came home safe. All of them lived the lives Griffin should have had. Got older, got married, became fathers themselves. My son stayed 19 forever, frozen in time like a photograph. I retired early from Caterpillar at 55. Took the pension and early retirement package because I couldn't concentrate anymore. 30 years of designing, hydraulic systems and excavator components, and suddenly I couldn't focus on blueprints for more than 10 minutes. Everything reminded me of Griffin. He'd wanted to be an engineer like his old man. I spent my retirement years restoring the Chevelle. It was a 1969 SS, marina blue with white racing stripes. Griffin and I had bought it together in spring 2001, planning to fix it up over the summer. Our project, he called it. After he died, I couldn't touch it for 5 years. It sat under a tarp in the garage, gathering dust, rusting slowly. Finally, in 2006, I started working on it again. Partly because I needed something to do with my hands, partly because it was the last thing Griffin and I had planned to do together. I rebuilt the engine completely. 396 big block, bored, .030 over, new pistons, new cam, new everything. It took me 3 years because I kept stopping to remember the conversations we'd had about compression ratios and carburetor jets. Every bolt I turned, every part I replaced, I imagined Griffin there beside me, asking questions, learning the trade. Why are you gapping the spark plugs at .035, Dad? What's the difference between 10W30 and 10W40? Questions he'd never get to ask. Answers I'd never get to give. I also took up fishing again. Smallmouth bass at Lake Nakamixon, same place I'd taken Griffin when he was 12. He'd been terrible at it, too impatient to sit still long enough for the fish to bite. But he'd loved being on the water with me, loved the quiet conversations between father and son. After he died, I couldn't go back for years. Too many memories. But eventually, I started going again. Not for the fish, really. For the silence. For the chance to sit in one place and remember him without interruption. Sometimes I'd talk to him out loud, knowing no one could hear me over the water lapping against the boat hull. Fish are biting good today, Griff. You'd probably still hate it, but you'd come anyway because you know it makes your old man happy. That's how I lived for 22 years, working on the car, fishing alone, visiting the cemetery every Sunday, keeping his phone number alive in my contacts, $25 a month to maintain a connection to nothing. Until last month, when that nothing called me back. Last month on October 14th, my phone rang at 3:15 a.m. I was asleep in my bed, same bed I'd slept in alone for 15 years since the divorce. The sound jolted me awake like an electric shock. I grabbed the phone off my nightstand and looked at the screen through half-open eyes. The name said Griffin Porter. His contact photo stared back at me. A picture from his 18th birthday, smiling, alive, holding a socket wrench he'd gotten as a gag gift from his buddies at the auto parts store. I sat frozen in bed holding the phone. My heart hammered in my chest like a piston with a bent rod. The room felt cold suddenly, like someone had opened a window in the middle of October. My hands started shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. This couldn't be real. The number had been disconnected for over 20 years. I kept it in my contacts, but it didn't work. I had tried calling it hundreds of times over the years, always getting the same recorded message. The number you have dialed is no longer in service. But now it was calling me. The phone kept ringing. 4 rings, 5 rings. I couldn't move. My thumb hovered over the answer button, but I couldn't press it. What if it was a mistake? What if it was some sick prank by one of those scammer operations? What if I answered and heard nothing but dial tone? On the 6th ring, something inside me broke. Maybe it was 22 years of hoping for exactly this moment. Maybe it was desperation. Maybe it was just the slim chance that something impossible was happening. I pressed the button. I lifted the phone to my ear with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. For 3 seconds I heard nothing, just silence, dead air. Then I heard breathing. Slow breathing in and out. Steady, human, real. Someone was there. My throat closed up. I couldn't speak. I tried to say hello, but no sound came out. My voice was locked somewhere deep in my chest. Then a voice spoke through the phone. Dad. One word. Quiet, confused, scared. My son's voice. I know my son's voice. I heard it every day for 19 years. I heard it in my dreams for 22 years after. I heard it in my memories when I worked on the Chevelle. This was him. Not a recording, not my imagination. Him. Actually, him speaking to me through a phone that shouldn't work. My vision blurred. Tears ran down my face and I didn't try to stop them. I still couldn't speak. My body wouldn't work. Everything felt disconnected, like my brain couldn't process what was happening. Dad, are you there? He said again. His voice cracked on the word there. He sounded desperate, lost, like when he was 8 years old and got separated from me at the hardware store. I forced air into my lungs. I forced words out of my throat. Griffin, I whispered. My voice didn't sound like my own. It sounded like someone else speaking through me. Silence on the other end, long silence that stretched for maybe 10 seconds. Then, yeah, it's me. Where am I? His question made no sense. Where was he? What kind of question was that? How could he not know where he was? What do you mean? I asked. My voice was shaking so hard I could barely get the words out. Where are you calling from? More silence. I heard him breathing faster now. Panicked breathing, like someone hyperventilating. I don't know, he said. I don't know where I am. Nothing makes sense, Dad. Something's wrong. Everything feels wrong. I stood up from my bed. My legs were unsteady, but I needed to move. I turned on the bedside lamp and started pacing around the room. I needed to think clearly, but my brain wasn't working. My son was dead. I buried him. I watched them put him in the ground. This couldn't be happening. Griffin, what's going on? I asked. Where have you been? I didn't know what else to say. What do you ask someone who's been dead for 22 years? How do you have a conversation with a ghost? He made a sound like a sob. I don't know, he said. I remember the accident. I remember the car hitting me. I remember dying. I felt it, Dad. I felt everything stop. I felt my heart stop beating. But then I woke up and everything was different. I look different. I feel different. I'm in some place I don't recognize, and people walk right past me like I'm not even here. My legs gave out. I sat down hard on the edge of my bed. The springs creaked under my weight. My son remembered dying. He knew he died, but he was talking to me. How was he talking to me? Are you hurt? I asked. Stupid question. He's dead, but he's calling me. Logic had stopped applying to anything. No, he said. I'm not hurt, but I'm scared. I'm really scared, Dad. I don't understand what's happening. Can you come get me, please? His voice broke on the word, please. He sounded like a little boy again, lost and afraid and needing his father to fix something he couldn't fix himself. The same tone he'd used when he crashed his bike and scraped his knee, when he got in trouble at school and needed me to come pick him up. Tell me where you are, I said. Give me an address. I'll come right now. I don't care if it's across the country. I don't know the address, he said. I'm in a building. It's dark. There are apartments, but they look empty. I'll try to find something with an address on it. Hold on. I heard movement through the phone, footsteps on what sounded like stairs, a door opening and closing, wind blowing, traffic in the distance. Then his voice again, clearer now. Dad, I'm outside. I can see a street sign. It says Pine Ridge Drive, and there's a number on the building, 3142. I grabbed a pen off my nightstand, found a piece of paper, an old electric bill, wrote it down with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. 3142 Pine Ridge Drive. What city? I don't know. Let me look for something else. More footsteps, more sounds of him moving around. There's a sign on a business across the street. It says Asheville Quick Mart. Does that help? Asheville, North Carolina probably. I knew the area from fishing trips to the Blue Ridge Mountains, about 6 hours from my house in Pennsylvania. Asheville, North Carolina, I said. That's 6 hours away. What are you doing there? He made a sound between a laugh and a sob. I don't know, he said. I don't know how I got here. I don't know why I'm here. But Dad, something's really wrong. I went outside earlier today and people looked right through me. A woman walked into me, actually into me like I wasn't solid. And when I try to remember how I got here, there's nothing. It's like I just woke up 3 weeks ago and I've been here ever since. You're not a ghost, I said. I didn't know if that was true, but I said it anyway. You're talking to me. You're holding a phone. Ghosts can't use phones. He laughed, but it sounded broken. Then what am I? He asked. I look in mirrors and I see someone older. I see a face that's almost mine, but not quite. I have ID that says I'm 41 years old. ID that says my name is Caleb Powell. But I'm not Caleb Powell. I'm Griffin Porter. I'm your son. My mind reeled. 41 years old. That was exactly how old Griffin would be if he'd lived. Born in 1982, he'd be 41 in 2023. But he died at 19. How could he be 41? I'm so confused, he continued. I'm so tired. Can you please come get me? I don't want to be here anymore. I want to come home. My throat tightened until I could barely breathe. I'm coming, I said. Stay where you are. Don't go anywhere. I'm leaving right now. I'll be there in 6 hours. Can you wait 6 hours? Silence. Then, I'll try. Dad, I'm scared. Those 3 words destroyed me. I know, I said. I'm scared too, but I'm coming. I promise you, I'm coming. What if this isn't real? He asked. What if I'm crazy? What if you're not really my dad? Then we'll figure it out together, I said. Just stay there. Stay safe. I'll find you. The line went dead. Just like that. No goodbye, no warning. Gone. I pulled the phone away from my ear and stared at it. The call timer showed 14 minutes and 18 seconds. I immediately tried calling back. The recording played. The number you have dialed is no longer in service. I tried again. Same message. I tried 10 more times. Same message every time. My dead son had called me asking for help and then vanished into thin air. I didn't try to sleep. I stood up and started packing immediately. I threw clothes into my old army duffel bag, the one I'd used for National Guard training 30 years ago. I grabbed my wallet, my keys, my phone charger. I didn't call anyone. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. What would I say? That my dead son called and needs me to drive to North Carolina? I just got in my truck and started driving south. My son was alive somewhere. Impossible. Insane. But he'd called me. He'd given me an address. I had to find out what was happening. Even if it destroyed me, even if I was chasing a hallucination, I had to know. 3142 Pine Ridge Drive, Asheville, North Carolina. 6 hours away. I'd driven longer distances for fishing trips, but this time I wasn't fishing for bass. I was fishing for my son. I drove straight through to Asheville without stopping except for gas. 6 hours of mountain roads and interstate highways, my mind racing the entire time. What would I find at that address? Would Griffin be there? Would it be abandoned? Would there be nothing at all? Part of me expected to arrive and find an empty lot, but I had to go. I had to see. The address led me to an old apartment complex on the east side of town. 3 stories, red brick, built maybe in the 1980s. But something was wrong immediately. The windows on the first floor were boarded up with plywood. The front entrance had a heavy chain and padlock. A faded orange sign hung on the chain-link fence. Condemned, no trespassing. Scheduled for demolition. My stomach dropped like a stone. This building was abandoned, empty, falling apart. How could Griffin be here? I parked across the street and stared at it for 15 minutes. This had to be wrong. Maybe I wrote down the address incorrectly. But when I checked my notes, it was right. 3142 Pine Ridge Drive. This was it. I got out of my truck and walked closer. The fence around the property was chain link, with holes cut in multiple places by bolt cutters. Easy to get through if you knew where to look. The street was quiet, no one watching. I slipped through one of the holes and approached the building. The front door was locked tight with that chain, but around the side, I found a door with the lock broken off completely. Someone had been using this entrance, recently, from the look of the fresh scratches on the metal. I pushed it open. It creaked loud enough to wake the dead, which felt appropriate under the circumstances. I stepped through into darkness. The smell hit me immediately. Mold, rot, stale air, urine, cigarettes. I turned on my phone's flashlight and looked around. I was in a hallway with peeling wallpaper and stained carpet. Apartment doors hung open on both sides like broken teeth. I walked slowly down the hall, checking the numbers. Apartment 1, Apartment 2, all of them empty. Trash scattered on the floors, broken furniture, evidence of squatters and drug users. This place had been abandoned for years, maybe a decade. I reached the stairwell and climbed to the second floor. More of the same. Decay, emptiness, silence, except for my footsteps echoing off the walls. I checked every apartment. Nothing. No sign anyone had been here recently. I climbed to the third floor, my heart pounding harder with each step. And then I found Apartment 12. Apartment 12 was at the end of the third floor hallway. Unlike every other door in the building, this one was closed. Fully closed. Undamaged. The number 12 hung straight on the door in brass metal that looked polished, clean, like someone had been maintaining it. I stood in front of that door for a full minute. Every instinct told me to leave, to run, to get back in my truck and drive home and pretend this never happened. But I'd come 6 hours for answers. I reached out and turned the handle. It wasn't locked. The door opened smoothly, silently, like it had been recently oiled. I pushed it open and stepped inside. Then I stopped breathing. The apartment was perfect, completely perfect. While every other unit in the building was destroyed and rotting, this one looked like someone lived here. Actually lived here. The walls were painted soft blue, clean, no peeling, No water damage. The carpet was beige and spotless. I could see vacuum lines in it, fresh vacuum lines from maybe yesterday. The air didn't smell like mold. It smelled like soap and coffee and something else. Something familiar that I couldn't quite place. I walked further inside, my legs feeling weak. The living room had furniture. A brown leather couch, a coffee table, a flat-screen TV on a stand. Everything neat and arranged like a normal apartment, like someone's home. On the walls were photographs in frames. I walked closer, and my vision blurred with tears. They were photos of my family, me and my ex-wife and Griffin. Pictures from when he was a child. His first day of kindergarten, his 16th birthday party when we gave him that motorcycle, Christmas morning when he was 12 and got his first set of real tools. I had copies of these exact photos at my house, stored in boxes I couldn't bear to look at. How were they here? Who put them here? I touched one of the frames with shaking fingers. The glass was clean, dust-free. These had been hung recently. I moved to the next wall. More photos. But these were different. These showed Griffin older, in his 20s, in his 30s. Photos that never existed. Photos that couldn't exist because he died at 19. In one photo, he stood in front of a college building wearing a graduation gown. In another, he sat at a restaurant with friends I didn't recognize. Another showed him standing in front of this exact apartment building, smiling, alive, looking exactly like he would at 41. I pulled out my phone and took pictures of everything. My hands shook so badly the images came out blurry. This wasn't possible. None of this was possible. I walked into the kitchen. Clean dishes in the drying rack. A coffee mug on the counter with brown liquid still in the bottom. I touched it, still slightly warm. I opened the refrigerator. Food inside, milk, eggs, sandwich meat, leftovers in Tupperware containers. I checked the expiration date on the milk. Good for 3 more days. Fresh, recent. Someone was living here. Someone was eating here, sleeping here, in a condemned building scheduled for demolition. On the refrigerator door was a note held by a magnet. My heart stopped when I saw it. The handwriting was Griffin's, the same messy scrawl he'd had since middle school. I pulled the note off and read it. Dad, if you're reading this, I don't know what's happening to me. I woke up here 3 weeks ago with no memory of how I got here. I have ID that says my name is Caleb Powell. I'm 41 years old. I work at a textile mill. But it's not my life. I remember being Griffin. I remember you. I remember Mom. I remember dying in that accident. Please help me figure out what happened. I read it 3 times. Then I walked to the bedroom. On the nightstand was a wallet and keys. I opened the wallet with trembling hands. Inside was a North Carolina driver's license. The photo showed a man who looked like an older version of my son. Same eyes, same nose, same slight scar on his chin from when he crashed his bike at age 8. But the name said Caleb James Powell. Address 3142 Pine Ridge Drive, apartment 12. I sat on the bed because my legs wouldn't hold me anymore. My son died 22 years ago. I buried him. But according to this license, he'd been living here under a different name. I called the hospital in Pennsylvania, demanded to speak with someone about the night Griffin died. After an hour of being transferred, I reached Dr. Rachel Brooks, a neurologist who'd worked that shift in 2001. Dr. Brooks, I said, I need to ask about September 15th, 2001. My son, Griffin Porter, died that night, but I think there might have been a mistake. After reviewing old records, she confirmed what I already suspected. 2 young men had been brought in that night from car accidents within an hour of each other, both critical, both with severe head trauma. One died, the one I identified as Griffin. The other survived but had complete amnesia. He became their John Doe case. Eventually, social services gave him a new identity, Caleb Powell. The next evening, I went to Blue Ridge Textile Mills where Caleb worked. I sat in my truck in the parking lot at 10:45 p.m. watching the night shift arrive. At 10:52, a silver Honda pulled in. A tall man got out, wearing work clothes, carrying a lunchbox. When he stepped under the lights at the entrance, I saw his face clearly. It was Griffin, 22 years older, weathered by time and work, but unmistakably my son. The way he walked, the way he ran his hand through his hair, everything was exactly the same. I got out and approached him. "Excuse me," I said. "Are you Caleb Powell?" He turned and looked at me. For 3 seconds, we just stared at each other. I saw confusion cross his face, then something else. Recognition, maybe. familiarity he couldn't explain. "Yeah," he said slowly. "Do I know you?" "I'm Hudson Porter," I said. "I think I'm your father." His face went white. "That's impossible," he whispered. But his voice shook. "Take a DNA test with me," I said. "Let's find out for sure." 3 days later, the results came back positive. Caleb Powell was Griffin Porter. My son had been alive for 22 years with complete amnesia, living under a false identity, and somehow, 3 weeks ago, he'd started to remember. We meet every Wednesday now. We work on the Chevelle together in my garage. He doesn't remember learning about engines, but his hands seem to know what to do. We talk about his childhood, his life as Caleb, the 22 years we lost. We'll never get them back. But we have now. We have tomorrow. We have a second chance that shouldn't exist. Sometimes miracles happen. Sometimes they call you at 3:15 in the morning and say, "Dad, where am I?" And sometimes, if you're lucky, you get to answer, "You're coming home, son. You're finally coming home."